Also, Tailwind has the possibility to abstract Tailwind classes with the apply, and it is also the recommendation not to abstract them, but you don't have to follow each recommendation. So if there is something that I would like you to go out of this room with is you don't have to listen to each best practice. You can judge what's best for you, for your case, and it's okay to abstract Tailwind classes also.
We'll have my good friend Yaro come on stage and talk about religious things, biblical stuff. So give it up for Yaro.
Yeah, continuing with the topic of religion, previously we had SQLite Jesus. Now we are going to talk about the 10 commandments and 7 deadly sins of frontend. So my name is Yaroslav. You can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn here. And you might know me from YouTube, SuperRails channel, so maybe I should actually start. Hello friends, this is the next episode of SuperRails. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell icon. In the previous episode, we talked about Hotwire. So I actually created maybe like 20 or 30 videos about different ways you can use Hotwire. But now we're going to focus not on Hotwire, we're going to focus on all other parts of our frontend. So Rails frontend. Now around Rails 6, it was in a dire state. We were using Webpacker, JS.ERB, Rails.js, jQuery, and writing frontend did not feel great, did not feel maintainable, and many people used React for the frontend, Rails for the backend, and I think this was the sentiment of this kind of videos. So Rails backend was always good, and it, in my opinion, hasn't changed much in the last 7-8 years, but the frontend has improved a lot over these years. So I think many of you still have Rails in the backend and like React or something like that in the frontend. And now we have Rails 7, and I think it is what drives this kind of Rails renaissance is the frontend. We have input maps and ESBuild instead of Webpacker. We have TurboStreams that is somewhat rebranded JS.ERB. Instead of TurboLinks and Rails.js, we have TurboDrive. And instead of using jQuery, we have Stimulus that feels more fluent for Rails developers. And I guess the frontend isn't changing much between Rails 7 and Rails 8. Really, if something is changing, is that in Rails 7 you are using SP rockets for delivering assets, and you're going to use PropShaft. That is just a slimmed down SP rockets, but everything else on the frontend is staying more or less the same. And yeah, now writing frontend for me personally is a joy. It is much easier than it was 5 years ago, and I have worked on projects of rewriting the React frontends into Rails frontends, and you can deliver like 80-90% of what you would be doing with a React frontend in just a Rails frontend using Stimulus and Hotwire. So, okay, let's go back to the topic, 10 commandments and 7 deadly sins. Now, let's start from the very beginning. When we create a new Rails application, we have a lot of defaults that we can use. We can choose the CSS, like Tailwind, Bootstrap, Bulma. We can choose the JS framework. We can use the assets, database, SQLite, obviously. And you can set main to use the main branch of Rails, but not the latest stable release. Now, talking of CSS, Bootstrap, I've used it mostly on projects that were started like 5 years ago, so it's more like long-running projects, legacy projects. For projects started in the last 2-3 years, I've hardly ever seen Bootstrap or other frameworks. We also have Bulma, but I've never seen it in a real production project, and have the impression that Tailwind is the standard that we should go for new projects. Talking of JavaScript, I think the main 2 options are input maps and ESBuild for new Rails projects. If you choose ESBuild, you will definitely not regret it, but input maps is the default. So if you are planning to import a lot of JavaScript libraries that contain their own CSS This is going to be easier for you to go with ES-Build. If you're just going to have your own stimulus controllers and maybe some small lightweight JavaScript libraries that you're going to import, you can go with the input maps. And yeah, like if you're importing a JavaScript calendar in this example, I would go with the ES-Build. So yeah, this is the default I would use for starting a new Rails application. Okay, we have started a new Rails application. Now let's generate some views, like a few static pages at the root. Okay, we have a page. And now we need to make it look like a normal application that you can click around with. So you would want to add some, like a navbar, a footer. Let's see how layouts work in popular Rails applications. No, not Rails applications, but like in popular applications. So first of all, when you start a new application with the views, you want to start with the layout. So here we have LinkedIn. You can notice we have a header, a sidebar, and the main scrollable content. So we have a sticky navbar, a fixed sidebar, and a main scrollable area. Something very similar is with Twitter, something very similar with Slack, the same pattern with ChatGPT, same pattern with Microsoft Teams. This is an app that I built. So this is the pattern of having like web apps in our days. We have a navbar, a sticky sidebar, and main scrollable content. But you should always think of not only the web, but also mobile devices. I think Hannah would agree with me. So it should look good not only on a big screen, but on a small screen. Even if you're building apps for business, still business users would like to open them in their mobile devices, and it shouldn't suck. And really, people around the world use mobile more than they use desktop. So these are just like some stats. So let's have a look how popular apps look if you open them with the web browser. Now, pay attention, this is not the LinkedIn app. This is LinkedIn that I opened in the Safari web browser. And it does look like an app. We have a scrollable main content, we have a navbar, we have a footer with buttons, same with Twitter. So all these apps look like, all these mobile responsive applications look like apps. And they do it by having a header, a scrollable main content, and a fixed footer with a few navigation links. So here is the pattern. Okay, and here are some examples of side by side. Here is Twitter. Here is an application that I built that is just on a mobile browser. Here is LinkedIn. Here's an application that I built on a mobile browser. And I think my applications look not bad. They also look more or less like applications. And talking about making your apps look good on mobile browsers, I would not use drop-down menus, hamburger menus. So here is an example of opening MDN web docs in a mobile device. You have this accordion, not accordion, but hamburger menu. It is a drop-down, and this looks like a website. So you're building not websites, you're building web apps. And for web apps, I think it's not a great pattern to have this hamburger menu. You should better have a footer. So here are the two patterns for the desktop browser, for wide screens, and for smaller screens. So going back, starting with layout design, I would say start with responsive layout design. Like if you want to make your app responsive, there's no point of making anything responsive if you don't have a responsive layout. This is where you should start with making your app responsive. Here is an example of a responsive layout that I built. So desktop had a sidebar, mobile has a footer navigation, and it looks quite cool and fluid. And here is the default layout that you get when you create a new Rails application with Tailwind. And here is a basic formula. I think it is a very good screen. How you can achieve the same with a new Rails application. So this is all the code you need, more or less, to have a sidebar and a sticky navbar and a scrollable main area on a desktop, and to have a sticky navbar and footer and scrollable main area on a mobile device. So if there is a screen I would take a photo of, it is this one. Okay, so going further, we have figured out layout design. It is like step number 1. Going next. So if you are starting to work with Tailwind CSS, if you haven't worked a lot with it, I would start with figuring out not colors, not backgrounds, but with spacing. There are 2 main ways to space content. It is flex and grid, and you should. I would have like flex column, so everything in a row, in a column on a small screen, and everything in a row in a big screen. So this is like the basics of responsive content spacing on Tailwind. So okay, we built our layout, we have the sidebar, we have the navbar, and now let's talk about the main content. So about the scrollable part, about the part of the application that can be different on each page. So here I have an application, here I have the dashboard page, here I have the API keys page, and you see they have a similar pattern. They have a title, a subtitle, an actions part, and the main content. So for this, I would use a page component. I noticed that in most applications that I work with, I have a page component to make the pages look more or less the same, and so that I don't duplicate a lot of HTML across the pages. I have a view component for title, subtitle, actions, and the main part that is inside the block. Also, often I want the content to take not the whole width, but also be centered. So it would be something like that. So here is a basic example of what a page component would look like, and I would use view components for this. Going next. Usually in Rails applications you have flash messages. So most common message when you just install device, like you have signed in or sign in was not successful. So how can you implement flash messages? Well, previously when I was using Rails 6, using like Webpack or whatever, people often use the external libraries like Toaster.js to make these flash messages go away after a few seconds, or for you to be able to click on this message and discard the message. But these days I would not use any external libraries for this, for something that you can achieve with just a few lines of stimulus. So here is like a complete implementation of Flash in Rails. I have a Flash component. I have a stimulus controller that has 2 actions. When the Flash message appears, it is automatically removed after 5 seconds, or you can click it to remove the message. Yeah, and here is the example of well, a Flash message that is centered on top in an application. So going further, usually you would want to highlight the link to the current page for the users to understand where they are navigating to. So I think it's not very visible on the screen, but here the dashboard is supposed to be highlighted. And there is a gem active link to, but I wouldn't introduce a gem for something that you can do in just a few lines of code. So here is like a custom implementation of active link to that I would put in a helper. And if I'm writing something like this myself, I would not forget to write tests, and remember that you can always use GitHub Copilot to help you write a test like this very fast. So going further with buttons. Now there's been quite a lot of discussions with the buttons. Actually, recently Alessandro Rodi posted an interesting question on Twitter. What is the best way to do reusable buttons with Tailwind CSS? And there were a lot of responses. So the default Tailwind documentation says that you should copy-paste the CSS from one place to another, and then you can use the browser, the IDE tools to edit everything in the same place. But it's not very comfortable. What if you are manually typing the button? What if you have 2 classes in the different order? This is not going to work. So I really don't like this default Tailwind recommendation. Also, I've seen in a few cases people who are using view components, they would like to create a button component and have like a few variants of buttons. But always this led to having a very bulky button component, and you're kind of creating your own DSL for buttons. And this never works out nicely, and this kind of button component always needs a lot of maintenance. So I wouldn't create a button component with view components. Instead, why do we need to reinvent the wheel if Bootstrap has the perfect API for buttons? And I would really suggest reusing this kind of API even if you're using Tailwind. So here is a custom implementation of the Bootstrap buttons API in Tailwind. You see just a few lines of code, and you can use button primary, button secondary, disabled states, different sizes like small or large, and you don't need to maintain a load of code all around. Also, Tailwind has the possibility to abstract Tailwind classes with the apply, and it is also the recommendation not to abstract them, but you don't have to follow each recommendation. So if there is something that I would like you to go out of this room with is you don't have to listen to each best practice. You can judge what's best for you, for your case, and it's okay to abstract Tailwind classes also. So we had a quick look at 3 different ways of abstracting CSS and different components. We have CSS abstractions, we have Rails helpers, and we have different components. And each of them, I would say, is like more and more complicated, more and more sophisticated. And I think you will feel in your application what is the best abstraction for you. So you can start with the CSS abstractions. If there is like some Rails logic, you can go with active link 2. If this is a whole component like titles, subtitles, action bars, blocks of content, then you can go with view components. If you're using view component, it doesn't mean that you have to use view component for everything. There's no hard rule on this. Then, talking of stimulus, I didn't like writing JavaScript a lot. I was trying to avoid it as much as possible before stimulus, and with stimulus it became really much joyful to like create small components that you can plug into the HTML. And here are a few small examples. Here is a tabs component. So here is a form preview. I'm typing something here and it updates here. This is a separate component and this is a small component, and I encourage you not to create giant stimulus controllers for like everything on the page. Small stimulus controllers that you can reuse all around. Then something you would usually do with the JavaScript, like a reveal hidden text component, a clipboard copy component. And if you're working with stimulus, I would also recommend, again, not reinventing the wheel. You don't have to create all the stimulus snippets on your own. You can reuse stimulus components from Guillaume Briaille, and you can also read the Better Stimulus guide with different best practices from Julian Rubish, who is somewhere here. Yeah, Julian. Then you don't always need any JavaScript. In some cases, you can just reuse native HTML components. A perfect example for this would be this kind of drop-down or show reveal. So sometimes this is just enough. You can just use the details HTML component. Or for a progress bar, you don't have to have 2 divs overlaying each other. Sometimes you can just reuse the progress HTML component. Going further, Hotwire. So I would say the main 3 parts of Hotwire are turbo drive, frames, and streams. Start with turbo drive and try not to disable it. So I've seen many code bases where it is either completely disabled or people randomly disable it on different links and forms. I would encourage you not to disable turbo drive. It works with device now. It works with nearly anything. Only if you're using like redirects to external websites, like with OmniAuth, you would possibly need to disable turbo drive. But for like 99% of the cases, you don't need to disable it. For turbo frames and streams, I would suggest first build the page that you're building with like full page reloads, and then add reactivity. So first build, yeah, I just can't stop on emphasizing this. Sometimes I have the impression that people add the turbo frames and turbo streams too early. And another important thing, they can exist without each other. So if you're using turbo frames, you don't have to obligatorily use turbo streams. If you're using turbo streams, you don't have to have a turbo frame. It is 2 separate things that don't have to, they can be somehow mixed, but they don't have to be mixed. Okay, here is an actual problem that you can encounter if you're using the latest version of Turbo. So here you see I'm just hovering on links and it is making GET requests to these pages. And sometimes when you are making this GET requests, you can have like some, I don't know, irreversible actions when you visit a page. And in some code bases, this can be an error. So in some cases, you would want to disable this prefetching. So when you hover on the link, you would not want it to make a request. This is a big gotcha moment with the latest version of Turbo. Also, dark mode. It is trending on Twitter, but I would suggest if you can build your application without a separate light mode and dark mode, do it. Maybe just build a dark mode, maybe just build like a gray mode or a light mode, but if you build both light mode and dark mode, it is double the CSS and 2 states that you have to always manage. So try to not focus on this. It is just going to take up a lot of your resources and take up your maintenance time. Also, if you can express something with an icon, try to express it with an icon, not with the text. So here is a simple example, and you will see it with any app that you are using. Also here, like if your users don't use your app a lot, it is okay to have some text under the icons so that they understand what they're doing. But if people spend a lot of time on your application, it will be intuitive for them and they will learn better if you just have the icons. And if you just have the icons, it gives them more way to just discover different features of your application. Then 404 pages. Often when I visit an app, I can just go to /404 and aha, this app is written with Ruby on Rails, okay. And the style in this kind of error pages is like a cherry on the cake of seeing to it that you have nice front end. So there are many options. You can always make a nice looking error page that your users will appreciate. Going further, so meta tags and title tags. So you visit different websites and you can have the different tab names. For this you need to use different title tag on each page in your application. And also Open Graph, like if you want your public applications in your application to be nicely shareable on social media, for them to have a title, description, and image, then you should use Open Graph meta tags. I've got a video number 160 about this. Also, a thing that many people complained about when Rails 7 was released is that it went with the default scaffold generator with a list of cards instead of a table. And I really like tables in scaffold generators because it gives people who are new with Ruby on Rails a feeling of like an Excel sheet with data. And you don't have to use this kind of default scaffold generators. You can actually override them in your application. And yeah, that's episode 164 where I talk more about overriding the default scaffold generators. Also, there are quite a lot of view component libraries. Even the UK government has their own view component library, and you can try to reuse their components and their style in your application. So I encourage you to try some of these libraries, and it can help you prototype your Rails views faster. So going back, we had a look at our layout. Always start with the layout when you are trying to make your application look nice and responsive. We had a look at the page component, something that wraps all the content inside the yield of your application, active link to, styling buttons, and so on. So yeah, that's more or less it. I invite you to visit superrails.com. I recently launched the app, and you can learn all about building responsive applications with Tailwind and many more topics. I'm also working on a series about Turbo Native, so building mobile applications with Ruby on Rails. And yeah, that's about it. Recently, also this summer, I launched paid subscriptions, so that's free content and premium content, and to watch like Turbo Native, you can subscribe. That's it.